Welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lay. Today, I'm joined by Steve Guberman. Again, he's the founder of Agency Outside and one of our certified agency M&A advisors who works directly with me and our other Inner Circle members to help agency owners just like you build and execute M&A programs. Now, Steve has experienced agency M&A from nearly every seat, from his first acquihire that required no cash at close to his exit to a larger PR firm. In this conversation, we unpack that journey and what Steve wishes he understood after that first acquisition, the thing that he helps you with now today. Steve's story is a great example of how one small acquisition can transform an agency and how recognizing the playbook early can completely change the trajectory of your business. Let's get into it. All right, Steve, thank you for joining me. Finally, long awaited.
Long overdue. Thanks for having me.
Now, Steve, many people in the agency world know you because they've heard your story told countless times. Give us the short version, and then I'm going to drill on the information you never shared before, hopefully.
Yeah, the short version is pretty much every agency I worked at stunk and every boss I had stunk. So I figured I'd be better at it. And I launched an agency like a good egotistical creative and realized, shoot, I have no clue how to run a business and kind of figured it out through lots of hard work, lots of coaches, and built a pretty successful agency that I ended up selling. And now I coach agency owners to figure out what their goals are, what challenges they have, and help them kind of map a journey towards what their definition of success looks like. And in the past, I guess, 18 months or so, I've layered in from a readiness standpoint, as well as an advisory role to help them do acquisitions for like a true enterprise exit. Thanks to
Long
what I've
before we
learned from
started,
you, actually.
appreciate it. And long before you were in my world and started taking board advisory roles with companies who are acquisitive, you had experience from an acquisition perspective before selling.
Mhm.
Take us back to the operator, Steve, who's in the agency, and let's talk about that first acquisition you experienced.
Well, I'll frame it in that I was probably 2 or 3 years in business, and was chasing all organic net new growth like every agency, thinking if I can, after attrition, if I can find a 20% growth year, that was going to be a successful year just through knocking on doors and BS RFPs. A local friend of mine had an agency that she had run for probably about 15 years at that time, and she was burnt out and wanted to go get a job. And she said, "Do you want to buy my agency?" And the roadblocks were there as they are with most people. If I don't have $1 million or I can't afford that, just the immediate, impossible mindset. And we worked out a deal that I put no money out of pocket and ended up buying her business on a straight commission plan for 2 years on all converted business. And the deal was she had one employee. She wanted that employee taken care of. I needed an employee and it worked out perfectly. So I basically bought my first employee that added about 30%. Coincidentally, that's the number we play with when we're doing acquisitions now. 30% growth in one fell swoop. Most of those clients stayed on for many years. Some of them were not a good fit and they slowly fell off by the wayside, which was fine. And actually, when I exited my business, some of those clients were still there 7, 8 years later and stayed on with the acquiring agency at the end. Yeah, so I mean, it was an amazing deal. It cost me, I think the first year was 20% commission, second year was 10% commission, or something like that. It stepped down, uh, and she was fine to just transition the accounts and walk away.
Steve,
And it also really helped that the employee I bought was a graphic designer, but also like managed many of the accounts. So she held a lot of the relationships that were easily transferable.
yeah. So everyone here is online, zero out of pocket for business buying, Steve. And people think that's preposterous. There's no one who would sell a business for no cash on close, only bad businesses. That's not, but you learned quite early that wasn't the case.
No, I mean, she knew that what she had. So I think the difference is most people are emotionally tied to their businesses and they think when I exit, this is going to be worth $1 trillion. And the reality is it's not. She knew that she didn't have something that was worth a whole lot of money. What she had was a client base. And there was no, like in her mind, there was no value of cash up front. And I was very straightforward. Like, I'm not sitting on a pile of cash. Like I don't know, maybe had 60 days runway cash in the bank. I was not, super cash strong, but I wasn't going to get an SBA loan. It didn't seem worth it in hindsight. What I know now, it might have been, or something bigger might have been. But yeah, she was super flexible and understood that like the commission was like free money for her. Otherwise, she was going to shut it down, right? We see a lot of agency owners nowadays that are like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm either going to sell it or shut it down. And that last option doesn't need to necessarily be an option. Like there's a way to get cash out of the thing that people have built. And she realized that pretty early on, like in our conversation.
Yeah. How did you know her? Like, what was the background?
A local competitor, friend, local network, shared clients. We competed against each other for clients, chambers of commerce. So Jersey's a pretty small world.
Yeah, but it's one of those great sources of finding acquisition targets, which is the local communities, the people who you interact with within a competitive context. When they get to a certain stage in the business, the only person who can really buy them, if anyone, is the competitor who can step in right away. Now, did you know you were doing business buying? Did you research it? Like talk about the maturation of, hey, this is just kind of falling in my lap. Hey, this could work out to, oh, I'm actually doing something that is M&A.
Didn't realize what I was doing like as a sophisticated method of growth. I just thought this was like dumb luck. It landed in my lap kind of thing. And you're right. Like I think most early acquisitions will be people in your existing network. It's people you know. It can happen over, just BSing about business. Yeah, business is rough. We've had a rough go of it this year. Can't make it work, whatever. Hey, did you ever think about selling? Or I'm thinking about just shutting it down. Like those conversations happen every day, coffee shops, bars, Zoom calls, whatever. And so this was that. So no, I didn't realize that this was like something like even under the M&A umbrella. It was not on my radar, which is crazy because both my parents were entrepreneurs. Like my mom had built a business as she eventually exited. My dad was a business broker for Pete's sake. And like, so th- if it was like told to me that like, hey, what you're doing is M&A, I wasn't listening. It didn't click. It didn't dawn on me that this is something I should be doing more of. I really wish it had, because it was a pretty easy thing to do.
You're a creative first. Could that have played into the lack of exposure to M&A, although your dad was a broker? Like, was it just like the right brain, left brain kind of segmentation of like what's available to you and what you know to be true about your business and your opportunities? Was that straightforward?
Honestly, I think I was still very much an operator at that time. Like I was still doing design work. I was still running like as a creative director. I had not like it wasn't until like probably 5 or 6 years in that I really got myself out of the day to day enough that if I had done that later in the run of the agency, I probably would have realized more. But for me, it was, just on to the next client, on to the next project. So I just really think that's like the difference between being in the business and running projects and doing design work versus thinking like a CEO. And I didn't have a CEO mindset at that time. Like I was still very much designer turned agency owner. So I do think it was a mindset thing. It was a lack of understanding what I was or the role that I wanted to be in. And it took a few more years for me to get there.
Can you place that on the timeline for us? So, like the start of you really being an independent agency, the acquisition, and then your exit of the agency?
Yeah, I mean, this first acquisition or only acquisition was in year 2 or 3 of owning it. By year 6 or 7, I definitely had gotten out of the day to day. I had put a really strong team in place, so I wasn't running projects. I had a project manager, I had an account manager. We were about 8 or 10 and had broken the $1,000,000 mark by like year 8 or 9. And then year 10, I ended up exiting and selling to a traditional PR firm. Again, somebody I had known for years. We shared clients. We would pass referrals back and forth and local community. I was their first acquisition. They were a 30-year-old PR firm. And so they had done mergers amongst partners and then split ups of partners, but they were pretty steady for about 20. And the reality is I shopped my agency around. Again, what I know now is like, oh yeah, you put this deck together and this is the stats of my sim. I didn't know what a sim was. I just knew I can pitch my agency to people that don't do what I do. And I knew how to pitch and it was one of the things I love doing as an agency owner. So I shopped it around. I did nine, like a road show of my agency. I pitched 9 agencies, all local, all people I knew for years and years. I knew, some of them were second generation owners. I knew their parents that ran the agencies. Ended up getting 3 offers, very different than the structure of what I had when I did my acquisition because I positioned it as there was true value here. There was contracts that were transferable. My team did not want to go along once we decided on the PR firm. They didn't want to go to a PR firm, and fully get it. We were a creative shop. And so, yeah, it was a pretty sweet deal. I took about 2 years to learn how to be an employee. And for me, it was checking the boxes. It wasn't necessarily, it was not an exit that was life changing money, but it was life changing in that it was at the time of my life where I was burnt out being an owner. And so the boxes I wanted checked were like benefits and payroll and not being responsible for feeding other people and things like that. So, yeah, yeah, it was a 10-year timeline.
You have gone through so many seats that exist in an agency, and then you're talking to all these founders now. What about your M&A experience? Do you regret from being an operator to now what you recommend to founders today?
I mean, the core regret looking back is, man, I wish I had seen that first acquisition as an unlock because there was, dozens of people in her situation that I would have loved to have done business with after that one. And it would have, knowing what I know now about like the ascension and maturity of a business towards enterprise value, it could have made that exit a life changing exit beyond just the experience of the opportunity. And so, if I had grown it, instead of just $1 million of revenue, could I have grown it to 5 million or 10 million through the acquisition, and acquisition strategy? So, I mean, I would push, and I work with a lot of founders to get them out of the day to day and become owners and not operators. And once they're out of that day to day, they're able to see clearly of like what their vision is and get clarity around what their goals could be. The goal doesn't always need to be to buy or to sell. I talk a lot about like build an agency that you enjoy running or that has value that you can sell or that has value that you can keep running and live off of, or, you have the optionality. I don't know that I realized I had optionality. I felt like it was either shut the doors or take it on this roadshow and sell it. So I think owners need to work more aggressively to get out of the day to day, stop being the operator, the designer that I was, and like put a team in place with systems that they can trust so they can step away for a period of time and realize the business can run without them or it can't. And now you've got more optionality.
It's lovely how much it's informed your vocation. Like you've become the mentor you needed that you didn't have to the founders so they don't relive the same timeline or pressures that you have gone through. What's some of your most exciting memories from being an operator? And then I'm going to kind of about face to the companies you get to support now. But like when you talk about what was fun, 'cause I think we both said at one of my events, you said, I never want to own an agency again. You wouldn't buy one because you don't want to be an agency operator again. But what was the fun part about being the owner? What did you enjoy the most?
So sidebar, I do fight the urge or thought of like maybe I could, I see like what Mark does or a couple of other people in our community who like own an agency that they don't run. And so to me that there is some like and I know it's not completely hands off, like how Peter does things like that, but to me there is some allure there and I keep fighting that cuz I don't necessarily want to do that, but it seems like it could be a fun thing to do one day.
Well,
The thing
let's unpack that before you get to my answer. That's a really interesting thing to unpack. The thought process about buying an agency from someone who was an operator, someone who's a creative, was I would buy it and therefore I would have to do intervention. You'd be pulled into the business naturally because it's yours now. But now you've learned and you've experienced there's investment level, there's holdco, there's a variety of different ways to add value. And so you can buy into an agency and not be on the org chart, not deal with the same agency pressures. And that's very appealing because then you get to leverage all of your experience, all this. You're the old sage. I don't mean old in a disparaging way, Steve. I mean, you have all this wisdom and you're such a valuable partner to the company that you could potentially support and own.
That's kind of the mindset is can I invest in something that I think is kind of like what do they call it, a gem in the rough or whatever, and like help polish it up. Knowing what I know about agencies, I've coached upwards of 100 agencies, and I've seen a lot of them like really like find their superpower and really turn on the ability to run a really successful agency. And again, successful is by definition of the owner or the people that are running it. And I don't believe in like cookie cutter goals and cookie cutter success stories. So could I be a part of that and then benefit from the growth that it has? So yeah, I think there is something there. Maybe not this year, but Soon, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Transactions transform.
Yeah.
And whether or not you materially transform or partially transform is highly dependent on where you sit on the cap table, as well as how well you're rewarded for the transformation. But every deal changes you. You will
Mhm.
know the woman's business you acquired until you die. You will know the company you sold to until you die. It's like a notch in the brain. You're never going to forget it. Well, the same thing goes with anyone who's using M&A as a vehicle of accelerating growth. You're doing something extremely meaningful, strategic, complicated, and complex. And if you can increase your probability of success by partnering with people, having coaches or advisors, it's highly recommended. Back to my question,
Yeah.
Steve, which was,
Yeah.
what was good about being an agency owner? Because I know, those of us who
Yeah.
have exited sometimes have less than favorable descriptions of our times as CEOs and owners. What were some of the favorites?
So I believed fully, this far pre-COVID, and there were some remote agencies and people with remote employees, and I believed fully that everybody needed to be in the office. I built an environment and a culture that was kind of surrounded around the studio, and so I loved pitching. I loved even, shit. Sometimes you lose, and just the thrill of the pitch. I loved that. I loved getting the team together and brainstorming ideas. I would spend lots of nights there with just music on overhead speakers, just cranking Beastie Boys all night long or whatever it was, and like being in the zone of doing that creative execution. I loved when my team came up with awesome ideas that I had nothing to do with, and just seeing them excel and learn and push envelopes. And seeing them grow was really magical. Yeah, those were the things that I thoroughly loved doing. Hated payroll cycles. Hated needing to lay people off. When we tightened our positioning, we niched down into a number of verticals, kind of bastardizing Blair End's guidance of, pick three, we picked four, ish verticals, and getting to say no to clients and fire clients. I thoroughly loved. I encourage clients to do that regularly. When you're niche down and somebody's not a good fit, saying no. When you grow and you go upstream and somebody's not a good fit that's currently on your roster, get rid of them, pass them off to somebody else. Like, it's just a really good confidence builder in the overall agency. I love going to bat for my employees and like protecting them from some of those clients that we all know to be somewhat toxic. Yeah, so it wasn't all. It was a decade of mixed bag of things. A lot of it I really enjoyed. And yeah, I do miss some of it, but not enough that I want to launch anything, especially in this agency climate.
A decade long is a long time to be a founder of a business and be on the entrepreneurial journey. You ended up selling, and then you described the first 2 years as learning to be an employee. Can you talk about the transaction and kind of the expectations the buyer had around your role? What did that mean? Because you described it as, I was like, the way it sounded, Steve, was it was out of character, and you had to learn to be something that maybe you weren't.
So, we talk about a lot of entrepreneurs being unemployable, and I didn't necessarily think that I was unemployable, but through the process of looking to sell the business, I entertained a pretty high level job at a telecom agency here, or a telecom company here in New Jersey. And I ran it by my brother. He's one of my closest friends and advisors. And he's like, "You will absolutely go crazy in corporate America again, but you have other options." And so I'm not unemployable, but in the right environment, I can thrive. And so learning to be an employee meant I don't need to interject when I'm not asked to. I struggle with that because I believe that integrity is like, if you see something, say something. It's not just on the subway. It's like, hey, the agency could do better if we did this. And that was not always seen as like welcomed input. So kind of learning to like, all right, keep, I was hired on through the acquisition as VP of creative and digital. They didn't have any creative or digital team. It was traditional PR. And so I was responsible to build out the creative team, build out the digital team, build out the services we were going to sell to the PR clients and to net new clients, and rebrand the agency, things like that. And so these were all new things that they had never had. And I needed to like learn that my job kind of stops at this part of the ecosystem. I'm not responsible to feed people. If there's not new business in the pipeline, and it's not really my responsibility. And I struggle with that because I want to see everybody succeed. And I want to, I got incentivized when we all succeeded. So, it's just really learning what the boundaries were as a non-equity holder of a business. My title was VP. There's, no owner, no cap table, nothing for me like that. But there was cash up front. There was an initial 2-year earnout on transferred clients as well as net new clients. It was very favorable. Net new clients was commission in perpetuity, and the deal or the we were doing well and the business was going well and we were having fun. So I stayed on for an additional 3 years. So it was a great situation, good team, great clients. We were niched in commercial real estate, which is kind of boring, but PR teams love it. Communication teams loves it.
This was a 30-year-old PR firm, right? How would you describe the differences between the smaller boutique independent agency that you had, which was what, 10-ish people,
Yeah, we're
to
12
this
at our peak.
30-year-old firm? Because you were in both of those environments. Well, if you were to describe those attributes, how would you describe them?
It was just a very drastically different culture. I mean, the two owners wore suits to work every day. I wore jeans and flip flops and a t-shirt, not too different than I'm wearing today. So, like, that's the stark difference of culture. We had a spray painted mural on the wall of our conference room, and they had like pictures of bridges. I don't know in their conference. You know what I mean? A long wooden table with leather chairs. You know what I mean? So very stark cultural differences, and those are like just workspace differences, but that filter down into the people and how people worked and communication style. And we had in my studio no walls other than the conference room, and PR agency had everybody had their own office or cube and very just closed. So that's why, like, when I decided to go with that agency, my team was like, "Yeah, we don't want to go to a PR firm." It was
Were
not a
you
bad
dis
environment at all, just very different.
Yeah. Were you disappointed they didn't come with you?
Yes and no. Like, I felt very loyal to my team. They felt very loyal to me, but it was not the right environment for them. And I was proud of them for saying, I'd rather go find something else than just go along to an environment that doesn't feel right for me just to maintain a job. And so they all landed amazing next opportunities, and I was taught build people up so that they can leave, treat them well so they don't want to leave. And when they do leave, support the shit out of them. And so, the latter part of that is exactly what I felt, inclined to do and help some of them get next jobs and stay in touch with many of them to this day.
So if we were to unpack R&J Strategic Communications, their strategy during their first acquisition was to expand the PR business into digital and creative, an area that they didn't operate. So they did that by acquiring your agency and asking you to come on and lead that initiative for them internally. It sounds like they retained clients. So they essentially got that book of business injected right into the company, right into the agency, that right away a transaction. And then they were incentivizing you to grow and expand this business unit to help de-risk the PR concentration that they had. Given that you're more sophisticated now and how you think about M&A and how you help founders today, if you would go back and evaluate how they did that deal as first-time buyers, how would you rate it?
I think it was a great strategy. We overlapped in a lot of verticals together. So consumer tech, I didn't do consumer or commercial real estate, consumer banking, consumer tech, we overlapped in, and nonprofits. So there was a good overlap there. This was a fully complementary service that they were bringing my agency and other agencies in and just feeding us the work and not making money off it. From that sense, if the work is there, bring the talent in house, bring the team in house. I think it was a really strong investment. Or at that time, strictly traditional PR at that time was very like 70-80% gross profit, very profitable, probably north of 70, consistently. I will say I would imagine creative, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but the creative and digital services brought down their overall gross profit. It was a bit more labor intensive because we weren't dealing with retainers that they were able to manage how over or underserviced the accounts were. Most of our creative and digital were project at first and then converted into retainers. And so because it was a fairly new team and a fairly new set of services, it took a while for us to find that groove of profitability. So yeah, so long story short, I do think it was a really smart move. I think it paid off. They still a decade later, they still maintain a creative and digital team. And they're still doing digital services, social media, things like that on top of their, blended in with their traditional PR.
Have they done any other deals?
Not that I know of. I don't think so. I think it
So
was a
they
one
did
and done
one
for them as well.
acquisition and then stopped doing M&A. Steve, you brought with them the bad habit.
Exactly.
Well, I want to carve out some of those components because you described it as commercially a very good acquisition strategy. And then immediately there was some cultural clash. Did you know that going in, or was that something that you found out as a side effect after the fact?
Yeah, I had a hunch. I knew the owners, I knew a bunch of the team members, and so I knew what I was getting myself into. I had two other offers that I entertained, and I chose this one because I felt like it was a more stable business than the other two. And the other two were not as complementary as far as the way that what I was bringing to the table would bolt onto. There was too much overlap in the other ones, I would say. So I knew that it was a trade off. Like, I'm not wearing a suit to work, but I'll wear like business casual. Like, that was the kind of compromise that I was willing to make. But I knew that this was a more stable business. I trusted the owners, like, unquestionably. And so what they had built was really strong. So yeah, no, I thought it was a good compromise on how to blend cultures for me when I knew my team wasn't going to go.
Yeah. So when looking to sell a business, you have a few routes. And one is to sell it for the maximum highest value. And the second is the best possible place for your team. And then you're hoping to land somewhere in between. And it's oftentimes when you're selling from the place of I'm motivated to get out and move on, at the end of the day, you're looking potentially for the best commercial, the best home for the clients if the team can't go with it. And it's not something that's publicly admitted to, but when an owner sells, the owner's selling for themselves, and it has to be the right fit for them. And then you ended up working there. So, is there anything about that transaction, about what you learned interacting with the deal organically, that you now advise founders to avoid, to take advantage of, things that are important for them?
So going into the deal, I took the emotion out of it because I knew that what I had built, like, emotionally, this is worth, it's priceless. But I knew that there was some value to it. And so there was somewhere in the middle. I needed to figure out how to get there. I feel like it was a very fair deal. I did not push aggressively for too many things. Again, I had a series of boxes I wanted to check when it came down to me understanding this is what I'm doing for me, and I wanted a job and I wanted sense of security. So I think understanding as an owner what you want out of an exit is important to understand before you're ready to exit. Build that plan towards it early on. Um, Again, I knew both sides, both of the owners of the deals that I executed. So expand your network. Start talking to the kinds of people that you think you would eventually want to sell to, or that you would eventually want to acquire, because it's cheaper and easier when you know the owners and you know what they've built and who they are and how they operate and how they think. When you share friends and peers in common, you can get a vibe of, this person is a jerk, don't do business with them. So, for me, that's pretty important. Or they're a great person to do business with them. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, the deal was very straightforward. We were closed in under 30 days. Once we came to terms, there was very little back and forth negotiation. And as once we went through kind of what I now know as a quality of earnings, before it was like, this is my roster of clients anonymized, and here's the percentage of confidence that they will transfer. Here's what they've earned me over the past few years. Here's what I think we can get out of them in the coming years. Once we got through that, they made me an offer, and I was like, yeah, that seems fair. Let's keep moving.
When you think about founders who want to sell versus founders who want to stay in their business, there's a completely different mindset. And what I've found is we, as potential operators and buyers, have a tendency of projecting our own bias onto other founders. I wouldn't accept a deal like that. So no one accepts deals like that. Well, I would not join. So I don't want security in a job. I'm an entrepreneur. Nobody would just sell their business for security in a job and want to join us. These are a lot of narratives people have because they're projecting themselves. You've talked to thousands of agency owners and founders. Is everybody some happy, enthusiastic operator who wants to do it until they die? Or are there plenty of potential acquisition targets that fit the attributes we've described?
There are definitely more acquisition targets than those targets even realize they are a target of. And what I mean by that is there are so many people that are just going through the hamster wheel of running a business because they don't feel like there's a way out until somebody knocks on their door and says, "Hey, do you feel would you be open to a conversation?" Literally just had this conversation twice last week with two owners that I've known for easily a decade. They M&A was not even on their mind, and somebody knocked on both of their doors separately, total separate conversations. And they're like, "I never even thought about it, and this is exactly what I need. I need to get out of this hamster wheel. I thought I was gonna run this business until I died, or I was just gonna shut it down." So, yeah, there's so many targets like that out there. There's people in your network that you probably know that are burnt out, especially now with what's going on with AI and the fear of, I'm gonna be replaced by a robot. Now is a great time to find somebody who's in that mindset.
Yeah, and I want to stress that we're talking about doing this in an ethical way, not taking advantage of the fear. What we're referring to is, so most of the time when a business doesn't qualify for a business broker to take them on in an engagement, it's hard to sell business. It might be a little hairy, a little warts on it. There's a lot of things that have to be fixed before it's ready to sell. They don't know someone will buy it today. They think nobody could buy the business. I'm in the weeds. I'm doing too much, or there's not enough value, and therefore I can't sell it. And they don't become aware of the option until someone knocks on their door and says, "Hey, Steve, how's business? Have you thought about selling? What's your vision for the future?" And then they go, "Wow, there's actually a home where my clients and my people and my brand can live on." And when you can give that to a founder, it's very meaningful. When you can allow a founder to transition, move on with their life, do their next project, spend time on personal things. We describe the motivations of a seller, and the vast majority of the motivations of a seller is not a distressed business. It's a life factor. It's a death in the family. It's a marriage. It's a child being born. It's a I didn't really like doing this. I thought I would, but I have these clients and these people who rely on me, and I don't really want to do it. But I'm not out. There's no out. And so when you become a buyer and you start having these conversations, and we say 20 conversations as quickly as possible, you find out quickly there's a lot of people who would happily join your vision and bring their clients with them. And there's ways to structure it that doesn't risk both the businesses. And it happens all the time. And to Steve's point, if you go to any agency event, you'll probably see Steve because he goes to more agency events. That's the only way I know what's on the agency event calendar. I just know what Steve's doing. You meet people. These are all people you meet. You do deals with people you know, like, and trust. At the end of the day, it's the most valuable bit. What are some of the most first orders of advice you give to a founder who's knocking on your door, Steve, and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about M&A."
As an acquirer,
Ooh, let's do both. Let's do it. Let's do it as an acquirer first, and then we'll do the other way.
get out of the day to day. Absolutely. Get a team put in place that you trust. Not that you're never touching your business. M&A, if your house is not in order, it will ruin your house. If you are too in the weeds of running your business, you can't focus on M&A. Uh, and it doesn't need to be that you're doing 1,000 acquisitions, but even just to do one, it can be a huge investment of time and money, more time than money. And then if you're looking to sell, if you're looking to exit, if you're looking for a new home, just have conversations. And actually, that applies for both. Like, have conversations with people that are in your network. Download your LinkedIn list of connections, sort through them, have Claude sort through them. Find me a business that's either a third my size that I can buy or three times my size that I can sell to, and just knock on their door. "Hey, how was your," exactly perfect, super casual. "How's your year going? Uh, you know, are you looking for any kind of expansion opportunity or something along those lines?" It happens all the time. It doesn't need to be a massive, $1 billion expense, $1 million expense. Mine was no money out of pocket, and I know plenty of people that do aqua hires, no money out of pocket, very little money out of pocket. So get out of the day to day, If the growth through M&A is what you want to achieve, you have to focus on it. You have to spend time doing it. But it's a huge unlock, and my regret is not realizing it was an unlock 15 years ago.
We get a lot of opportunities to put rooms of people together and get a variety of different perspectives of their journeys. And to your point, you said there's no one way to do an agency. But at some point, whether it be 6 years, 10 years, 20 years in, there's going to be a point where the business is going to transition. So let's talk about that 30% of your competitor. When a founder you're working with or someone approaches you and says, "Well, Steve, I was approached by a buyer." What's the advice that starts rolling off your tongue?
Have a conversation, get to know them as a person, understand how they operate, how they run their team, what their business is like. Ask around about them, see what the vibe is in the community. Are they good people? Do they lead with integrity? Or not even do they lead with integrity? Do they match your values? Right? Because I don't want to plug somebody to have integrity if they don't. But so do they match your values? Do they run a business that you want to be a part of? And then, have conversations. Think about what the complement is, what the fit is. I always encourage clients to entertain those conversations just to get it in your mindset of like, what are people looking for? Even if they're not the right match, you have an understanding of what would an acquiring owner be looking for in a business like mine. I'm working with a client now. They're a $4.5, $5 million web dev shop, only focuses on law firms. And they're having these kinds of conversations with much, much bigger agencies to understand what it is that the potential acquirer is looking for. Is it our IP? Is it our team? Is it just the book of business that we've built? Our EBITDA? Like there's a million, 5 or 6, not a million reasons why they could be acquired. But if they're not having these conversations with the people knocking on their door, they're in a bubble, they're in a silo, and there's no way that they're going to know unless they just ask me and I tell them.
Yeah, shortcut. Go to someone who's wise and who's been there before and ask them what's next. But don't just
But
trust
even
that
that,
one source. Yeah,
right?
go talk
Even
to the
that's not
buyers.
good. Yep. You got to
Yeah,
have your own conversations.
yeah, yeah. Being acquisitive means you're actively looking to buy companies, but it also goes to most likely you're looking to sell at some point. The vast majority of people, the high probable outcomes of M&A is creating enterprise value. It's messy, it's complex, but it's meaningful. And you typically only take up that type of capital allocation decision if you're going to liquidate it sometime in the future. Not always the case, but typically the case, especially for small business M&A. I would love you and I first met at an M&A lab, so our labs that we host. I'm curious, you're an in-person events guy versus a lot of online, although we do online. This podcast is online. Uh, What's your pitch or reason why people should join in-person events, join us in person at our live events for M&A versus just learning it online and going to large language models and thinking they're learning?
I guess I'll say, first is I think the community is massively powerful. Seeing other people talk about the deals that they're working on or the deals that they've already executed. If you want to do M&A on any level, you've got to be in it. It's not something that you're kind of just outside on the periphery on. And by being in it, you're hearing how deals can happen. You're opening your mind to new opportunities, new structures, new relationships. As you said, there's a million ways that a deal can be structured and that deals can land on your lap. So being at one of these events, we're talking about here's how M&A can happen and here's specific experiences on how it has happened or is happening. So the community is a massive part of it. The the playbook, I think, is essential. And so seeing you and not to like blow smoke for you or sunshine rather, the way that you talk through the playbook, like it is infectious and it gets people on the hook of like, this is what I want to do. And I've seen the light switch. I saw it happen for me at the Orlando lab, and I've seen it happen for dozens since where they're like, yeah, M&A sounds cool. I don't really know what it is. And they see how you walk through this playbook, the choose your own adventure chart. And I see that switch flip into this is possible. This is within reach. This isn't as out of reach as I thought it was. Let me get started. And what they start doing is exactly what I said, get out of the day to day, put an operator in place, realize that this is something they can do for massive growth and they're on fire from it. So like all of that and is I guess you can fully like encompass it with the energy of the in-person event is second to none.
Yeah, it's a rare high caliber room. The people who want to do M&A, it's plenty M&A curious or acquisition curious folks, but the people who invest money, come in person, be around others who are doing deals and then participating in the discussion, because we have programmatic buyers, folks who are doing roll ups, we have first time buyers. And it's just the types of founders where you go, these are my people. They're ambitious, they want to do hard things, but really meaningful things. And the transparency that's needed to talk about deals is also high. The collaboration, it's so fun. It's absolutely so fun. And thank you. Yeah, we've designed a very simple but effective playbook that requires a lot of buy-in organizationally. To Steve's point, to install an M&A program inside of a company requires you to take it as serious as you would running payroll, as hiring a salesperson. It's a true business process. And the people who do it casually, passively, or opportunistically don't have the highest probability of doing it successfully. And Steve and the others who have come on to really champion this playbook and this methodology just understand that it's discipline, it's fulfillment, it's doing the hard things, but the little things well every single time. And then you can reap the benefit of doing M&A consistently. When I first started getting into, I made it 80% my time as an operator. And I was different than Steve. So in my situation, I was very fortunate to have a president. We also had a head of ops underneath her. And although I was the CEO, I was the person. I went on sabbatical and came back, and I was filling my time again. And I made the priority to fill my time with M&A. But I also made a life-changing decision that I'm no longer doing anything but M&A. What mergers and acquisition meant to me was capital allocation. And my job as the owner of a business is to make decisions around the things that create more earnings for us, the owners, as well as expand that earnings over time. And this was the only thing in my 10 plus years at the time that ever moved the meter that dramatically. And I was a little bit more reckless in my first M&A journey, which was even if I wasn't 100% able to delegate it, maybe I didn't have the fully baked leadership team. I knew by putting my attention to this, it would make them step up. Because if you called me and I wouldn't pick up the phone or I couldn't go to meetings because I was doing all the M&A things, people naturally stepped into their titles with greater authority. Actually, I've found, especially in businesses sub 3-5 million in revenue, the owners are the bottleneck, and they have a tendency of stepping in and intervening, even though they've delegated and hired people who are responsible for it. And I'm a big fan of taking the sabbatical, the month-long vacation, or in this instance, doing M&A that directly pulls your attention to something meaningful, distracting, and seductive. So you don't get in your team's way. You hired them, you brought them on board, let them do their work. And M&A is a great way to do that. Steve, I want to ask one very important question. Hopefully, I have a little bit more time for it. You've gone from being a coach to now becoming a board advisor, working directly with founders in executing M&A programs. What's the biggest difference between coaching founders and being a board advisor to folks who are growing through M&A or want to go through it?
Yeah, so great question. I think probably the biggest difference is that as a coach, I'm helping guide them through operational optimization. So, how do I find the profit that should be there, or org chart challenges, or how do I get out of the day to day? And when I come in as a board advisor, the leadership team is already there. The owner is out of the day to day. The owner is ready to, they've got this vision of what can I grow this thing to? 5 to 50 or whatever that thing is. And so they're all in. They're ready to invest their time and their money in building this enterprise, building this collection of agencies, growing towards this life-changing exit that maybe they've spent 10, 15, 20 years chasing that organic growth that I also chased that you never really find. You might get, a real sweet RFP here and there, or some dumb luck. Your neighbor is the CMO of some big dumb corporation or whatever, and you get a nice deal. The reality is after attrition, your best year, you're maybe getting 20% organic growth. So the owners, where I'm able to help them and make true impact as a board advisor, is they can see 50 to 100% growth year over year and get towards what that massive exit is that they want it to look like, or what that end goal is. And it doesn't need to be an exit or, liquidity event, but the opportunity to have something of massive value versus just bang your head against the wall year after year, churning, chasing organic growth. So it's a mindset difference, a mindset shift. And I think it's a rare lightning in a bottle kind of thing that when people realize it, they're like, this is what I want to do. And this is where I'm going to grow my agency. They are all in on it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so fantastic for you to be a resource for them. Just like you and your first deal, people can get one deal done, hopefully safely on their own, but to build a repeatable engine that allows you to solve problems of your agency with things that don't exist. You need to have a team that supports you, be around others who are doing it, and have advisors who can see around corners and shepherd you through this journey. The number one predictor of success is the people you have around you who give you advice. And Steve, the founders of agencies are very fortunate to have you as that resource.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I love coaching. I love advising probably 10 times more. The M&A side of helping founders operationalize their business is super exciting. It's just a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm grateful to be able to do it.
Steve, if someone's listening to this and they said that hat looks like it's branded, so does Peter's, where do we typically tell them to go to get out to reach out to you?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest. Just look up agency coach. That's my handle there, or agency outside.
Steve, appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
If you like this episode, probably like one of our other episodes, click here.